By the way, I live in the countryside and there's just flies. It's fly season, so I'm sorry if there's flies. I cannot do anything about it. Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel. You wouldn't believe it. Hallelujah, my big kids are back in school. My baby is sleeping, so I have 1 hour to film this video before I have to wake up the baby and go pick up my big kids. So thank you everyone for sending over your questions and topics of interest and stuff. I've got a list here that I'm going to try to touch upon, so grab some coffee, hang in there with me, and let's get through this. The first question is, what does expat mean in my channel name? So an expat is just someone who does not live in their native country, the country they were born or raised in, whatever. It's a bit of a misnomer for me and my channel though, because expat tends to refer to someone who plans to move back to their home country. I do not intend to ever move back to the US. So I actually am a full-blown immigrant, but I chose the word expat for my YouTube and my Instagram handles because I needed a short word. I wanted to keep it short and sweet. I feel like expat does a good job of just indicating someone who's living abroad. I do talk a lot about living abroad, especially on my Instagram channel. And then also, the word immigrant is a tricky one because I feel like it's a political term. And I just didn't feel like it represented my brand, if you want to call it that. It just didn't feel like the right word for me. So I stuck with expat, although technically I am actually just a full-blown immigrant. The next question is, where did I grow up and how did I end up in Sweden? So I grew up in, if you're familiar with Southern California, I grew up in the South Bay. It's like this little beach cove in LA County. And my mom lives in Manhattan Beach. My dad lives in Hermosa Beach. They were married until I was 7 years old and then they divorced. But the two towns are right next to each other. So I just sort of like grew up going back and forth between Manhattan and Hermosa. And then once I became an adult and I went off to college, I went to a private university also in Southern California. I just kind of like took baby steps north, just little tiny steps north of where I grew up. So I first moved to a couple different apartments in Playa del Rey. And then I went up to West LA when I got my first post-collegiate job. And I was there for about 5 years, and then I moved to Santa Monica. And Santa Monica is where I spent the rest of my time in Southern California before I packed up and came here to Sweden. And then how did I end up in Sweden? I married a Swede. This blends into my third question, so I'm just going to kind of marry the two. So the third question is, how did I meet my husband and who made the first move? So before I met my now husband, I was dating a Swede in Los Angeles. I met him at the gym and we dated all through college. He was actually 15 years older than me. Sounds a little extreme, but it worked for us. And when I graduated though, we sort of like got to that point where either we're gonna get married and move in with one another, start a family, etc., or we're just not. And there didn't seem to be any commitment on his part, or I don't know, it just sort of felt like our relationship met the end of its life cycle, honestly. So it was an amicable breakup. The way I ended up meeting my now current husband is that I really missed having that Swedish influence on my life. I missed learning little bits of the language. I missed learning bits and bobs about this, to me at that time, rather obscure country in the North Pole. I didn't know anything about Sweden before I met my ex-boyfriend. So it was like a rainy night in the middle of February in 2010. I was procrastinating going to the gym, so I just went onto Facebook and I took my ex-boyfriend's last name, which was a very common Swedish last name, put it into Facebook, got presented with a list of random people by the Facebook algorithm, and I sent a message to the first guy on that list, and I asked him if he wanted to be my pen pal. I just wanted to talk to someone from over here. I wanted to have that authentic exposure. I wanted to learn the language. I just thought it would be so cool, how random and how cool to just randomly meet someone on the other side of the world and let the universe pick that person for me. I literally sent a message to the first person on the list. And I am now married to that guy, living in his house, and we have 3 kids. So that was not the plan. The plan was just to have this really cool, random, secret, foreign friendship and like have a pen pal, a modern day pen pal. It did not, like I didn't plan on it actually going this far, but here we are. So it was a very beautiful relationship, as I bet you can imagine. We got to know each other from the inside out, from a distance, over a long period of time. In terms of who made the first move, I don't know if we're talking about like who made the first move in the relationship or who made the first actual geographic move, but the answer is me to both of those questions. And then we had several trips planned for me to come out here and visit him over the first several years of us knowing each other, but they kept getting canceled. And I'm gonna put a link to a video that I recorded at like the very infant stages of my channel here. But I explained my whole relationship and immigration story in that link. It just answers this stuff in all the dirty details. So I'll put that down there if you're interested in it. So it wasn't until 4.5 years after we met on Facebook that I actually came out here for the first time and met him. But leading up until that point, we basically had talked almost every single day since we met each other. So it was a long time coming. We had never professed our feelings for one another, but it was pretty obvious that they were there. After that trip, he and his best friend came out to visit me for a month, and we went basically on a 1-month road trip up the western coast of the US, and it was like the best time of our lives. It was amazing. And then at the end of that trip, Yuan and I decided we wanted to do this thing. I was already 31 at that time. I was at an age where I kind of was starting to think about having kids, and I knew I wanted to have them with him. I had been in love with him since I think probably only 2 or 3 weeks into having first met him on Facebook. I just knew he was my person. I knew he was the one. So I just knew that I was not going to be able to move on in my life without at least trying to give it an honest go, and he felt the same. And so we decided that I would move here because we wanted to have kids, and for reasons I won't get too deep into, I just never wanted to have kids in the US. So I moved here. That was the reason I moved, and that is the reason why I am now here in Sweden. Next question is a doozy. What was it like to immigrate to Sweden? What is it like to settle into a foreign country? What were the best and hardest parts? So again, I'm going to reference that video link down below in the description box because I spill the tea on the hell on wheels that it was to immigrate to Sweden. The hardest part and the easiest parts of moving, I'm gonna just sum it up and say the easiest part was moving to someone who is a native to this country, who had a house already, who knows the systems. He was able to just shoo me in and get everything all set up, and I didn't have to think about it. I didn't have to worry about a language barrier because I had an in-home interpreter. So that was definitely the easiest part. And the hardest part, it was the lifestyle change for me. I went from living on the beaches of Summerland, okay? Like, I grew up in a summer land my whole life. I played beach sports. I was a competitive beach volleyball player. I had a massive network of friends out there. I went to school from preschool all the way to college in the South Bay, like basically in Southern California. So my whole life was there. All my siblings are there. My family was there. My friends were there. The climate I was acclimated to was there, you know. All my favorite stores, my favorite restaurants, my happy places, my whole identity was there. And then I moved here, and I didn't realize how much of a sacrifice that would be. It took me a long time, especially when I was going through postpartum depression with my first baby. It wasn't till around then that it started to really sink into me what it meant to give up what I did to move here and start over. All I could taste in my mouth at the time was adventure, and finally being with the person I loved, who I knew I could not move on in life without. Does that make sense? I knew I had to move here. I don't regret a single thing. I just didn't realize how much it would cost me and what that cost would feel like until I was finally here. Do I plan to live here permanently? Yes. We have talked about potentially moving to Spain down the road. We've also talked about possibly moving to Canada. My husband is sick of Sweden. I don't blame him now that I've been here almost a decade. But in terms of moving anytime soon, like within the next 10 or 15 years, we're staying here. Okay, this is another doozy, Cecilia. How do I feel about healthcare here versus the States? And then how do I feel about the pregnancy and maternal care? I don't know how to answer this. I have thought about this one for days and days, because I have very mixed experiences with healthcare here. But if we're expressly comparing healthcare here to the States, I'm going to say the healthcare here is not anywhere near as good as it is in the US. I'm not going to say it sucks here. And thankfully, I live in a small commune. What do you call commune in English? A small municipality? I don't know. I don't live in Stockholm, so it's not super crazy congested here. It's relatively easy to get times at healthcare places that, like there's not huge wait lists or anything like that. But I was fortunate to have PPOs my whole life in the US. My parents had PPOs, so as a child, I had PPO coverage. And then in all the jobs I had, once I got off of my parents' plans and onto my own job plans, I had PPOs. And so if you're not familiar with US healthcare PPO, it gives you the opportunity. I mean, you pay through your teeth, of course, but you get to go anywhere you want. You get to see, no one can tell you no. No one can say, oh, you've got to go to this doctor and get approval first before you're referred to a specialist. And with the last job I had in the US, our health insurance premiums were paid for. It was one of the perks of the job. And so I did pay my copays, but they were not much at all with the PPO we had. So I got excellent health care for dirt cheap. And I miss that very much, because here in Sweden, in terms of my mixed experiences, I have had lumps, breast lumps. I've had lumps on my body that I was able to do an egen remis, which is you just go to the hospital, you go to the department, oncology department, whatever, and you just send them an email, basically. You fill out their form, and then they are like, okay, we will give you a time, and you can just come here directly. I didn't need to go to a primary doctor first before getting a referral. So I have had fantastic experiences with that. With my breast lumps several times, I was in almost next day. I was getting biopsies and ultrasounds and mammograms, and I got a lot of good care. I got a lump on my tongue, and I had a time like the next week at the hospital, and they did the biopsy and all this and that, and they removed it and stuff. So when it comes to like scary stuff, I've had really good experience. I also have had really good experiences with my postpartum depression care. I have all the red flags on my files now based off of what I went through the first time around. I'll put a link to that whole story if you're curious about it. It's major TMI trigger warning status video, but I'll put it there in case you're curious to know what was up. But I have all the red flags, and so I have people checking in on me left, right, front, and center once I have a baby, and I pretty much have any therapist I want on speed dial, and I'm allowed to just go in. That's been great. But in terms of poor experiences, when it comes to just going to a primary care physician, I've not had good experiences. First of all, let's just talk about how difficult it is to get a hold of medication in general here. I'm used to the American way, where you get sick, you get the medicines, you carry on with life. And that's just not the way it's done here culturally. Here in Sweden, it's like you get sick, then you like slog through it. You be tired, you stay home, you rest, you don't pump your body full of drugs and medications. So I have had issues that have been scary for me. For instance, most recently, when I was postpartum with Benny, he was about 9 months old. I haven't talked about this anywhere, by the way, so you guys are hearing this for the first time from me. I started seeing flashing lights, and it was usually only in dark places, but they were these pulsating, strobing lights, just like this, around my whole periphery, and they were so bad that they would blind me. I couldn't see anything. So every time I was getting up to care for my baby in the middle of the night, I couldn't see what I was doing. And when I tried to lay down and sleep, even when my eyes were closed in a dark room, it was these pulsing, flashing, strobing lights. And I gathered the courage to Google, and Google told me my retinas were detaching. And so I called Vårdcentralen, and I'm like, I think my retinas are detaching. So they did take me in, they did see me, they looked into my eyes, they're like, no, your retinas look fine, it's probably nothing. And then they told me it's just anxiety, get onto your anxiety meds. And that didn't feel adequate to me. I didn't feel like enough investigation was done. They did do a blood test to make sure my bloods were normal, and everything was normal outside of like cobalamin, I think. Some random thing was out of reference range, but whatever. But then I finally started sleeping better once my baby stopped teething and going through like the 8-month sleep regression thing that he was going through. And that's when the strobing lights stopped. So that whole thing happened, but I just didn't feel like I was given the attention and care that I was used to getting in the States. Another incident, and then I will stop harping on the healthcare system here, was just recently when I threw my back out. I couldn't breathe. My back was so bad and in such spasm, I could not breathe. And it was so bad, I couldn't change my baby's diaper. I couldn't do it. My mother-in-law had to come up for one day, then my husband was home for a couple days. Anyway, I called Vårdcentralen, which is just our healthcare center, and they wouldn't even give me a time to see me. They're like, sorry, there's nothing we can do. You just have a back spasm. Take paracetamol. I can't breathe. I can't care for my kids. I can't care for myself. I needed a muscle relaxer. Just give me 1 day's worth. I'm not like looking to get hooked on anything. Just give me 1 day's worth to get through and relax my back so I can get a grip on my body. Give me something. But no, they told me to take Tylenol, basically. I didn't even get a time to get seen. So then I went on to rehabmottagningen, which is the like physio. And I couldn't get a time at the physio. The nearest time I could get was 4 weeks down the road. Presumably because it's holiday season and you know, everyone is still traveling for the summer and stuff. So that was a huge, huge issue. That was a huge issue for me. And thankfully, I was able to get control of my back by taking toxic amounts of ibuprofen, pretty much. But yeah, I definitely would take the US healthcare system over the Swedish healthcare system any day, but you also can't beat the fact that it's free. You know, it's universal. I don't ever have to worry about not having healthcare for myself or my kids if I ever lose my job or if I get sick or crippled or, you know, on disability for some other reason. I never have to worry about healthcare. So it's a good trade-off. And to make this question even longer, how do I feel about pregnancy and maternal care? This is going to be extremely biased, and my answer to this will be quick. I love it. But that's because I have had very easy pregnancies, very easy deliveries. I have not needed to tap into extra care. I wish we got more ultrasounds. I wish we got the beta blood draws. I wish it was so much easier to go in and get things like my progesterone tested. I desperately wish we got more access to diagnostics here, like you guys all do in the US. They don't do it here because obviously it is an expense that's not necessary. And when the taxpayer is paying for people's healthcare, you just don't give out unnecessary healthcare, honestly. And right now, the economic situation as it is here in Sweden, there's not a lot of money to go around. There's a lot of people who have needs, not enough staff, and not enough money to pay for a lot of excessive things. So politically speaking, I totally get why we don't get things here like they do in the US. But in the US, you get it because everything is, you know, privatized and you're paying for it. So you generally get what you pay for, right? I feel like what we get here is the minimum, but it's adequate. Out there in the US, you get so much more, but it is quite exorbitant when you think about it in some circumstances. Like, there are some things that probably aren't necessary and maybe even cause more worry than good. So I don't know, it's completely different here versus the States. My experience with pregnancy and maternal care, it's been great because I haven't needed anything extra. Do I speak Swedish to the kids? Jag pratar en blandning av engelska och svenska till mina barn. We don't do the one parent, one language thing here. I know that is definitely a thing that people do in the bilingual, trilingual language communities, is one parent speaks one language, one parent speaks the other, and I hear that works great. we've taken a much more casual approach. And yes, I speak Swedish to my kids all the time. There are days when I only speak Swedish to them because sometimes they're the only people I have to speak Swedish to. Like, I need to learn to speak Swedish also. I don't have anyone to talk to. So I speak it to them all the time, and I love it now because my 6-year-old will now correct me, or she's like a perfect interpreter. I'm able to translate through her. Oh, Macy, how do you say this and that? Whatever. And my husband also speaks English often to our kids, so it's just a whole mixture of stuff over here. What do we grow or raise on the farm, and what do we do for jobs? I have dual degrees in international finance and international business. And then I have a minor in marketing. And so all of the jobs I have done leading up until now, at least before I moved to Sweden, were in the finance industry. I worked for a wealth advisory, and then I worked for a private Asian equity hedge fund. I did mostly investor relations. I did all of our marketing at the wealth advisory. I did all the event planning and stuff like that. I did a lot of back office work, internal reporting, budgets, forecasts. So that's what I did in the US. When I moved here to Sweden, unfortunately, all those jobs are in Stockholm or in Gothenburg, both of which are just too inaccessible compared to where I live. So I worked, and I technically currently still do work for a small med tech startup, although they're in the process of selling and there's no work. So I'm still on the payroll, but I'm not doing anything right now with them, and I am currently looking for a new job. But what I did at that company was, technically I was the marketing and communications manager, but there were only 3 of us working at the job, so we all just did everything. So that's what I do for a job. My husband works in IT. I'm not into IT, I couldn't even tell you, but he does IT. And what do we grow and raise on our farm? We have goats, but they are mostly just pets. We don't breed them, we don't milk them. That was always our plan, but it's just been too time consuming to do it with having kids and everything else going on. But we also have chickens, we have Sussex breed. We grow them, raise them for both meat and eggs. So we have that. And then on our farm, here's a little time lapse I did yesterday for you guys. I had to cut back a third of our potato crop because we have a potato virus here, and it severely affected the type of winter potato we planted. So once the stem gets infected, the virus will quickly go down the stem and into the actual tuber, and it will destroy your potatoes. It'll turn them into mush. So once the leaves are dead, the plant really can't grow. The potatoes can't really grow much anymore underground anyway. So then you cut all the stems off while they're still green, and then they can just stay there. They can actually stay there throughout the winter even. So we leave those under the ground, and then we take them up when we're ready to eat them. So we grow a ton of potatoes. We grow enough potatoes to feed us an entire year. We have a polytunnel, which is what you see kind of in the background of that video, which is like a big half dome type greenhouse where we grow cucumbers, tomatoes, and grapes. We also have grown peppers in the past, and this winter I'm going to try to grow a winter garden in there. But otherwise we stick to the basics. We have berries. We have a ton of berries. Raspberries, blackberries, gooseberries, strawberries, smultron, which are like these small wild strawberries. We have Jerusalem artichokes growing this year. We have a ton of carrots, a ton of beets, zucchini. We have peas and green beans growing and kale growing. We used to also have lots of pumpkin and squash plants, acorn squash, butternut squash, that kind of thing, but we're currently dealing with a uncontrollable infestation of mördarsniglar. They're like these slugs that just demolish everything. I had planned on having a corn crop this year, and I had planned on growing quinoa and amaranth to try to make some chicken feed for the winter for our birds. But I have to research if those plants are going to survive with these slugs around. We grow organically. We don't use any kind of chemicals. We have our own compost that we put over our land each year. It might just get down to the point that we need to buy snail poison. I don't know what else to do. It's really bad, but when it comes to the squashes and the pumpkins, the slugs will eat the flowers, and without the flowers, you're not going to get a fruit growing. So that's a really big bummer, but we lost like our entire crop of corn and pumpkins last year. So I just said, screw it. Let's just keep it short and sweet and simple this year, get through this year, and then we'll reassess next year. But that's what we grow. Do we plan to keep growing when we move, and will family be closer to help? So I have talked in the past that we need to move. We're going to move about an hour north to be closer to where my husband works. Unfortunately, that's in the complete opposite direction from where family is. So family already lives about an hour away from us. Now they're going to be like 2.5 hours away. So no, we're getting even farther away from help. But yes, we do plan on getting a house in the countryside up there. And we're hoping to have lake access so that maybe we can do some fishing. And otherwise, we're going to just have a grow and chickens and everything up there as well. So nothing will change in terms of our lifestyle. Okay, here's a funny one. This will go quick. Can we have a tour of your house, and what is a typical day like for you? No. Let me just tell you guys, we bought a fixer-upper. What you see, what you have seen, is very selective spaces in this house where it looks somewhat finished, but we still need to do, for instance, the crowned molding around the whole house. We have electricity sockets all over the place, like, oh, where's my finger? Right here. This whole situation, like, these need to be fixed and finished. We still need to put like the wooden caps around like the frame. Oh my gosh, where's my hand going? The frame around this section of the house. And we still have unfinished parts of the kitchen. We have unfinished parts of the bathroom. We've lived here now for 8 years, and this house is still unfinished. And then in terms of a typical day, I don't have a typical day. My day is just constant mayhem. And it would be so fun to do a vlog, like a daily vlog. But again, it's mayhem. I can't be that organized yet. Maybe once we move to the new house and we're settled into a new life, I'll do it, but I can't do it yet. Names for the fourth baby. Yes, we have names. I'm not going to share them though, unless we do get pregnant, because I don't want to jinx it. It feels very jinxy to me. I'm keeping these names very close to my heart. We 100% have our girl name picked out, and I have a couple boy names that I am in love with. It's going to take some convincing with my husband, but we will wait and see. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Share the differences between life in California and life in Sweden. The short answer to it is there is not a single thing similar between Sweden and California. Other than that, both regions are, I guess you could say, politically liberal. But the climate is different. The vegetation is different. It is a completely different biome. Attitudes toward religion and politics are pretty different. And then just in terms of my lifestyle, nothing about my life, and I touched upon this earlier in the video, nothing about my life here now, being married with kids on the countryside, not working, not having access to a beach, none of that is anything like the life I had in LA, where I was single and just like, just doing whatever I wanted, and I didn't have kids, and I was, playing sports and stuff. The one thing that is similar is that I was an athlete in the US, and I consider myself still an athlete now. What do I miss from home, and what has living overseas taught me? I will just answer this briefly, and that is I miss my family. Moving abroad has taught me that while I miss my stores and I miss my happy places, I miss access to the beach, I miss my friends, I miss my restaurants, I miss so much. The reality is I miss a specific time in my life that no longer exists. All of those things have changed. Friends have moved on. Friends have moved. Friends have become parents and no longer, like my whole volleyball scene. I don't even recognize faces that I see on Facebook anymore. I don't know those people because all my people have moved on, and now new people have moved in, and restaurants have, after the pandemic, restaurants, stores, they all closed. New construction has gone up. Things I'm used to seeing aren't there anymore. Restaurants I was used to are completely gone. I want a time machine to go back in time and relive 10 years ago to re-experience those things. Those things don't exist anymore, though. Everything has moved on. And it's so funny because a couple years ago I came to this realization, and I wrote an Instagram post about it, where I was like, all this time I thought I was changing, having kids, getting a new career, so to speak, getting married, giving up volleyball, taking up lifting, doing this farm life. I thought I was the one that was changing. I was so scared to go back and visit the US because I was afraid no one was going to recognize me. But I realized that for as much as I was changing, everything at home was changing. And so now there's double the gap between us. And like home doesn't recognize me and I don't recognize home. It's a very unique feeling that an immigrant or an expat may feel after a certain period of time. They call it reverse culture shock when you go back home, because you realize home isn't home anymore. And like you just feel like this, you're in this in-between land where your foreign country might not technically feel like home. It might not ever feel like home, like the home you grew up in. But the home you grew up in doesn't exist anymore, and you didn't grow and change with it. So there was like this sudden stop, and now you're no longer a part of it anymore. It's very weird. It's extremely weird and unsettling sometimes. But really what traveling overseas, what moving overseas, living overseas has taught me is that family is everything. Family is the one constant in life. It is what anchors you to your past, your present, and your future, and it's all that matters. It's just the love from family. And seeing my parents age and I'm living so far from them is really hard. All of my siblings, all three of them, have gone on to have kids now. My kids haven't met their cousins yet. And yeah, that's maybe also one of the hardest parts of moving abroad, is not having access to family like I used to. Do we have time for this? This is the last question. What's your best party story? I got this in an Instagram DM. I have two really funny party stories. I don't know. You guys are welcome to click out now if you want. I'll share these. I'm going to try to keep these brief. My first favorite party story is that once upon a time when I was in my 20s, I had decided that I wanted to go into forensic accounting. I was thinking about applying to join the FBI and doing forensic accounting. I was so inspired by the Bernie Madoffs and the Enrons and all of these huge financial investigations. To me, that is so exciting. Oh my God. Okay, I'm just editing this right now, and I needed to clarify. The crime is not exciting, but the investigation and trying to get the bad guys is what is exciting to me. That's what I meant. So I wanted to go into the FBI, but I'm also like a super lightweight. I get scared really easily. I get intimidated really easily. I wasn't sure if governmental work was for me. So I decided that I was going to become a reserve deputy sheriff in a local, very affluent community in Southern California. But they have a lot of white collar crime. Is that it? Like fraud and stuff, especially with old people getting defrauded. And so I had met some police people. I had done some ride-alongs. I had sort of networked my way into this Rancho PV sheriff's department and was talking to them. And they were very much encouraging me to go through the police academy, become a reserve deputy, and I could work on white-collar cases with them on a volunteer type basis. And if I liked it, then I could just move over to the FBI. And so I'm like, okay, this is perfect. I can keep my day job, literally, and then do this on the side. And how exciting and cool would this be? I went through the rigmarole, and it finally got down to me applying. I needed to apply to go to the Sheriff's Academy in Orange County. And to do that, I had to go through the whole background check. And so I got all my paperwork submitted, this, that, and whatever. This is a real life story, by the way, okay? And this is how it came to a crashing end. So I had to go to my polygraph. I had to do a polygraph. That was my last step before I went into the police academy or the sheriff's academy or whatever it was called. And so it started out on a Friday night in downtown LA, and I show up for my polygraph, and the polygrapher who was going to do it forgot that he had me on the time. I actually went in just as he was leaving, and he's like, can I help you? And I'm like, yes, I have a time, and I showed him my stuff. So he started off pissed, okay? It was Friday night, I'm sure he wanted to go home, and now here I am, and he has to do this whole interrogation of me. So I go in, I sit down, they sit me in this shoebox room, and like, do you remember in school, the ceilings were made of tiles that had a ton of dots in them? You know, like they have it in hospital ceilings too, dotted ceilings. So it was ceiling and walls were made of these dotted foam board type thing. It was very, like I felt like I was hallucinating. It was very intimidating. Bottom line is I sit down, they have me in the cuff. I am sweating bullets. I am scared to death. I am a basket case. My brain is way too strong for me. I can't control it, and I know I can't control it. And when that happens, I psych myself out even more. So my heart is going a million miles a minute. And he has this series of questions, and in each time he tests me, the questions get mixed around, but the first question always stays the same, which is, what is your name? Because that should be a very easy question. They use that to set the bar for like, okay, she said this is her name, this is her name, this is like the normal response we get from her, so we can expect that when she's telling the truth about other questions, it should be about this range, whatever. This is how I assume it goes. Anyway, I somehow managed to fail my name because each time he tested me, my body gave off a different response. And sometimes it was like wild. So like I failed my name, and I also failed one other question. It had something to do with theft. Because while I was sitting in that chair, I remembered suddenly, because like you have to do a whole confession in your application of all these things, and then they'll do the polygraph, and then that's whatever. They just want to make sure you're not hiding anything, right? So I had confessed all the times in my life that I could remember doing petty theft. Like I shoplifted as a teenager. I had a friend in college when I was a teenager. We swiped some nail polishes and some makeup from the drugstore. I have since made amends with that, okay? But I confessed it in my document. But then in that chair, I remembered every single time I stole something in my home growing up. Like that time I dug my hand into my brother's piggy bank and took a bunch of dimes, you know, and I spent it on like 99-cent or 49-cent cheeseburgers at McDonald's, you know, like when they used to have those campaigns or whatever. Or like the time I like swiped my sister's, like a t-shirt of my sister's. Or I don't know, like there was a time when I was 6 or 7 that I was homesick and I went into my brother's room and I took some of his Monsters in my Pocket toys. And anyway, I started getting bombarded in that chair of all the times in my life I've taken something that wasn't mine, and I blew up the polygraph. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm having a complete crisis right now. What do? I can't sit down and confess on paper every single time in my life that I took something. Like I can't do this, right? So anyway, I failed the polygraph. He's like, don't worry. This happens to a lot of people. You just need to come back. We'll retest you on a couple things. It'll be fine. So I'm not even at the part of my story yet that makes it a party story. So I leave, it was like 9 p.m. on a Friday night or something like that, in downtown LA. My car was the only car parked on the street when I got there, and when I left, I am now sandwiched in between two cars that had parallel parked close to me. So I'm looking at my car and I'm like, oh my God, it's going to take me forever to get out of this spot. I'm like boxed in, right? So I get into the car, I'm sitting there, and I'm sobbing. I'm breaking up, crying. You know, I can't believe all the people I've let down. This whole career path I had in front of me is now gone, and like I'm so embarrassed to tell anyone, my boyfriend, my mom, whatever, that I failed the polygraph. I feel like such a failure. I was so down on myself. I'm just sobbing in the car, right? Like I gotta cry before I drive. It's not safe for me to drive in this emotional state. And then it starts to pour rain, and I'm like, of course, this is like something out of a movie. So I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, someone knocks on my passenger side window. Or I'm thinking, okay, maybe I forgot something in the police department. Maybe they're bringing it over to me, and I look, and there is this maniacal looking, what I'm going to assume to be homeless person. Just hair, like this person must have been on drugs, because I remember looking into his eyes and one of his pupils was like this big and the other one was super tiny. I mean, like I'm talking about, this is just someone that has been released after an alien abduction is what it looked like. Just crazy looking person. And I'm like, oh my God, 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 you know? And I start turning on my car, locking my car doors, and he smiles and he turns his head like this and he waves at me. And I thought, this is when I die. This is the time I die. I'm not going to survive this. And so I turn on my car and I'm like, now currently in the process of backing up, going forward, backing up, going forward, backing up, going forward, trying to get myself out of this boxed in position. And this guy stands up. He's on a curb. I'm sitting low in my car. My window is crotch level to him. He unzips his pants, pulls out his schlong, and starts peeing on my car in circles. Like this, all over my car. And I'm like, going, screaming, trying to back out of my spot, back and forth, tears going down my face. It's pouring rain. I got this crazy drugged out guy peeing in circles around my car. I finally get out of the parking spot. I just bolt down toward the highway. And oh my God, it was like one of the scariest, most random, weirdest moments of my life. But it was in that moment that I realized that it probably was best that I didn't go into law enforcement, because I don't think I would have been able to put myself into situations of danger like that. And like, yeah, anyway, that's my first party story. My second party story, I did actually end up briefly dating an NFL football player after cutting him off in traffic by accident. It was just before Christmas and I was late for work. I had slept in, and so I like flew out of my my parking garage and accidentally cut this guy off. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I felt so bad. And so he ended up pulling up next to me in traffic, and I'm like, I don't know, do I look at him? Do I not? Do I look at him? Do I not? And so I like look over and he's looking at me and I'm like, oh my God, I feel so bad, you know? And then it just so happens that we took the same very random like side street path to get to work, because in LA, you know, if you're trying to go to work in rush hour and you're running late, you stay off the freeways. You have to know like the side streets to go. And so he and I are both going, we keep ending up side by side on the same streets. So then it became like this joke where I was like looking over and like waving, and then he would look over and he would wave, and it was so dumb. And then we get finally to where I'm about to turn off to go to my office, and we're side by side again. And so he rolls down his window and he motions me to roll down my window too. So I do that. And so we just like, we had a laugh about it, and we exchanged names. He said his name was Danny. I told him my name was Megan. And he's like, oh, do you work over here? He's like, I got to turn off and go to work. I'm like, yeah. I work in the MGM tower. It was, I don't know, it was funny, whatever. I don't remember exactly the identifying information I gave him, though. I think I might have told him I worked at a wealth advisory in the MGM tower, because then I go to work and a couple hours goes by and my receptionist says I have a call, a guy named Danny who's asked to speak to me. And I'm like, what? And so I take the call and I'm like, hi. He found where I worked, and he found the phone number. And I guess like in retrospect, I'm looking back on this and I'm like, man, this feels kind of dangerous. Anyway, it was Danny Farmer, you guys. Like, my mom went to UCLA, my brother went to UCLA. I grew up watching Danny Farmer play on UCLA's football team. I was a big Bengals fan. Like, I watched him, which is random, by the way, but the whole thing was so completely random. It was so random. But we went on a few dates, and then I guess you could say we're still friends. It's been a really long time since I've talked to him, but that is a fun party story, because who would have thought that would have happened, right? Anyway, it is now exactly time for me to go and pick up my kids, and that is the end of this Q&A. So thank you for sticking around. If you did, that's some tidbits about my life, and I guess the next video you will see will be my cycle update. I'm cycle day 7 today, so I don't even know yet if we will end up TTCing the cycle, but I hope we do. I hope we do. Say a prayer for me, you guys. So catch you all in the next one.